I think this is an area here that we want to cover because people want to understand what's the process I go through, or what's the process the franchisor goes through to determine who becomes a franchisee. So we've called this the qualification process, and really it's taking into consideration how both parties are going to go through the stages of making a decision. And so typically after the first inquiry is made, whether it be through an online form or something, or a phone call to the franchise company, there's going to be a request from the franchisor to complete what they have as an investor application or a questionnaire or some sort of a form that they'll want you to fill out that's quite detailed, that'll explain information about yourself. It'll talk about your financial situation. It'll talk about your background, ask questions that'll help the franchisor get a better handle on who you are, what you're trying to do, and what you have in terms of resource to be able to do it. After the application's been submitted, then in some cases the franchisor may offer to send some additional information in the form of a marketing package that has more details about the franchise. It could be a video that you watch, it could be a DVD, it could be any other method in which they explain to you who we are, what we do, why our concept is a good concept, why it's a great opportunity for you, and they get that information into your hands. The next step would be after you've received that and reviewed that, they've had a chance to review, they meaning the franchisor has a chance to review your application. They're going to determine whether or not the basic information you provided meets the criteria that they have for their franchise. A lot of it has to do with the investment range, the amount of capital that you have available, the net worth that you have. Again, the two phrases that come up from a franchisor in their request for information is how much liquid capital do you have and how much net worth do you have. So liquid capital, to simplify that, just simply means how much money do you have available to write a check for, meaning liquid. Could you take a CD and convert that into cash? Do you have some money in a savings account? Do you have other methods that you could convert easily and quickly into cash where you could write a check? That's what they consider liquid capital. The other part that they want to know is what your net worth is. Now, net worth, in a simple explanation, is all of the things that you own, the value of everything you own, or the assets that you currently own, less how much you owe, all the liabilities that you have. So you take the total amount that you own, less the amount that you owe, and whatever that number is how they determine your net worth. So they may have a minimum requirement for liquid capital, and they may have a minimum requirement for the amount of net worth that they want individuals to have to make sure that you have the financial stability to be able to make the investment and have the ability to borrow more money in the future, or to be able to secure a lease if you need to secure a lease. So they're going to look at those as part of their criteria to determine whether or not you can afford to operate one of their franchises. They may also tie in their financial qualifications with what they know a bank's going to ask for in order to get financing, whether it's an SBA guaranteed loan of some sort, but the franchisors would typically know how much money you would need to have, how much net worth you need to have for the banks to be able to loan you the balance of the money. Once they see that you may meet all their criteria, they'll want to have some sort of an interview to go through and clarify questions on your applications, to ask you, to get to know you, just to build rapport, to make sure that everybody starts building a relationship, because I sometimes refer to this process as the dating process, with the idea that after we've dated for a while, we're going to decide whether we want to get married. And so after if everybody still feels good about how things are going, the franchisor believes that you're qualified, you seem to be motivated for the right reasons, then the next step would be for them to provide you with what is referred to as a franchise disclosure document, or for short, it's a FDD. The FDD is required by the Federal Trade Commission. Now, the Federal Trade Commission is a national organization that oversees the franchising methods to make sure that franchisors are providing investors with the proper amount of disclosure to make a good informed decision. And we're going to break this down in a future part of our course here of understanding the disclosures and the franchise agreements. So we'll get to that later, but that's part of what will happen in this process is you'll get a chance to go through these disclosures and find out in detail things that you'll need to know in order to make a good decision. Once you've received that document, a clock starts ticking. And the day that you get it, you'll be asked to sign a receipt. Now that receipt will start a clock. They call it the 14-day waiting period. So it'll be 14 days before you could even buy the franchise if you wanted to. And that's, again, to make sure that you're taking the time, and it's not an emotional decision, it's a decision you're making after spending enough time to really analyze and make a thorough evaluation to decide whether you want to get involved. Now, you'll probably still want to know who you're going to get involved with. And they have franchisors typically set up what they call a Discovery Day. Now, a Discovery Day is an opportunity for you to visit the corporate headquarters, whether it's somewhere local to where you're at, wherever the corporation is that the franchisor's working at, whatever they're headquartered, you would make a trip to that location. You would generally meet with the principals of the franchise, in most cases the CEO or the president and the franchise development folks that you might have been talking to along the way, and you get a chance to tour their facilities. You get a chance to usually get a background on the company and who's running it and what their vision is, and then get a chance to go to some operating locations somewhere, talk to franchisees, get to test the products, taste the products, see how the services are provided. So you get a chance to really see what it's like inside of the world of the franchisor and what it might be like as a franchisee. The next step here would be after everybody's gone through this process, if both the franchisor believes after meeting you, spending time with you, interviewing you, they decide that they think you would be a good fit for their organization, and you believe after meeting them that you would be a good fit for their organization, then you would move to the next step, which would be to create the documents or the legal agreements or the franchise licensing agreements that you would eventually enter into. And there might be some customization or some negotiation that needs to happen in that process to define the territory that you want to be in, the number of locations you might want to open, those types of things, the timeline in which you're planning to make your investment and get started, how many owners are going to be involved, and whether you're a corporation or whether you're a sole proprietorship. Those types of things would need to be figured out before you created the contracts. The next thing you would do is you would go have those contracts reviewed, get legal review. The franchisor would probably have their legal team review them or actually write the agreements up once some of the terms and conditions have been determined. If everybody's satisfied with the legal agreements and the attorneys and everybody that's overseeing the process believe that it meets the criteria and has everybody's interests in mind, then the next step and the final step would be to actually sign the agreements. And once you sign the agreement, you would obviously have to make your first initial payment, which was usually going to be based on whatever the franchise fee is that you've been determined or have negotiated. That's what you'll pay. Once you've made that payment, then you'll be awarded the rights to operate under that franchise agreement. And then that's when the timeline starts for the franchisor to begin the process of putting you into a training, getting your training started or at least scheduled. They'll also begin the process of helping you understand what you need to do to find a location, some of those other considerations. But this is where the relationship really gets started. So again, it's a two-way interview through the process. The franchisor wants to make sure you're right for their concept. The franchisee has a chance to find out if the franchise system is the right fit for them, if the philosophy of the company is correct, if the way that they conduct their business seems to fit your style, and you feel good about the relationship at that point, then you would go ahead and move forward. But that's kind of the process that most people go through. Most franchisors have a similar process. They might go in a little bit different order, but for the most part, you'll go through all of these steps to determine whether or not you're a good fit for any concept.